If you're a fan of prestigious awards and you're a big fan of ranking books, then today's video just might be for you. Today, I will be taking a look at the 2025 Pulitzer Prize finalists and winners. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan, and today we're taking a look at one of my favorite things every year, and that is reading the Pulitzer Prize finalists and winners. Now, let me do a few things for this video, and I will admit that this is going to be a little different. I may be a little more meandering. My thoughts may not all be in order because I'm actually going to be a bit of a live reaction to reading what the books are. I saw the list when they came out on Monday and I flipped through it, although I have not had a chance to really look at what each of these books is about. Some of the authors I recognize, a couple of the books I have already read, and I will be telling you guys what I think about these books, which ones I'm most excited to read, which ones I've already read, and just what I think about the Pulitzer Prize books in general. But first of all, let me just give you a quick summary about what the Pulitzer Prizes are and maybe tell you a little bit about why exactly I'm a fan of them and why these are the books that I try to read all of the finalists and winners each year. So the Pulitzer Prize is a set of 23 annual awards presented by Columbia University to honor excellence in American journalism, literature, and music. They were established in 1917 by the will of Joseph Pulitzer, a Hungarian-American newspaper publisher who left funding to create both a journalism school of Columbia and these prestigious prizes. Actually, fun fact is Columbia initially did not accept it, and it went to the University of Missouri, which if you know anything about journalism, you know that University of Missouri to this day has an excellent school of journalism, and that's actually why, is because they originally had the Pulitzer Prizes. I'm not sure at what point, but it eventually got back to Columbia, I guess once it became more prestigious. I don't know. I don't know that path exactly, although I'm sure it would make for an interesting story. Each year, winners receive a certificate and a cash prize of $15,000, except for the Public Service Award, which is represented by a gold medal awarded to a news organization. Categories range from investigative reporting and explanatory journalism to fiction, poetry, drama, and even audio reporting, which now includes stuff like podcasts, which was added in 2020. The only music category is for Distinguished American Musical Composition premiered during the year. So I should say, when I say that I read the books, that means I read the categories that have books as the subjects. There's 23 awards, but a lot of those deal with all sorts of other ways of reporting. That's actually at the heart of what the Pulitzer Prize is, at least initially, was, of course, investigations and news reporting and who is doing that well. And so that's actually who you will frequently hear reports about. If someone says a Pulitzer Prize winning investigative journalist or anything like that, that is because the Pulitzer Prize is probably the best prize in that respect. But they do have 6 categories that the nominees are going to be books, and that is what I focus on. I listen to a lot of news throughout the year, and so I would like to think that a lot of the stuff that wins it I have heard throughout the year, or at least bits and pieces of it, but for one reason or another I am drawn to the books specifically. Now, there's a lot of different book awards out there, and I do also look through those. Why the Pulitzer Prizes are the ones that I've been pulled to is, well, I'm not entirely sure, but I suspect there's a few reasons. First of all, I have yet to read a Pulitzer Prize book that I didn't find at least some redeeming quality. Now, that doesn't mean that I've loved all of them. On the contrary, there's a lot of them that I don't necessarily care for, especially if it's too experimental in a way that I just don't connect with. I have a tendency to not particularly enjoy that. But I do really appreciate the opportunity to get a list of books that have been vetted by people that like good writing. One of the problems with going after only the most popular books, which is something I also do, is I get some fantastic books that I love, books that I adore, but I also get a lot of books that I think rightfully so have some criticisms, especially about the way things are written, and I'll still read them. I will still enjoy them to a certain extent, but I really appreciate having books that have been vetted by people that are specifically interested in high quality literature. And on top of that, the fact that the Pulitzer Prize is at its heart is about journalism and very much related to the news, and is very open about acknowledging the fact that they are reporting on stuff that is related to this day and age, I think really makes them so much more relevant, even when the books you're looking at, the topic, have nothing to do with what exactly is going on today. But if you think about it, you're like, oh, but I can see the resonance. I can see why a biography about this person or that person might all of a sudden have a strong appeal in the year 2025. And I think that that's really important. I think that that helps to contribute to the value of these books specifically. Now, before I go on, let me just name the 6 categories that I am personally interested in. They are the ones that have books. And by the way, I should say this, usually, this is the way it usually is you have 2 finalists and the actual winner. So each of these categories usually has 3. Sometimes they will have 2 winners and only 1 additional finalist. And sometimes, for one reason or another, they will actually have a 1 more or 1 less. I've seen an example where they actually only had, I think they had 2 winners and no additional finalists. And so sometimes they just have some oddities to them. I'm assuming that's because in the voting there was an actual exact tie or something. I don't know for sure. But anyways, here are the ones that I'm interested in. So first of all, you have fiction. That is the only category that is strictly fiction. Everything else is some version of nonfiction. So you just have fiction. I believe at one point it was called novel, and so you can see how that has been expanded in terms of what it can cover. Last year, one of the books was a series of short stories, so I think, you know, you can see anything that's fiction in that case would be applicable. Then you have history. This is just a broad history, and this is admittedly probably my favorite category because I really enjoy the books in it. Not all of the books are written by journalists. There's actually a fair amount of academics that do get their books in this list, but that means that it was written in a way that mass audiences could appreciate it. And even though a lot of times these books will actually come from university presses, I still think that they're very well written and very engaging, and that's one of the reasons why I personally enjoy them. Then you have biography. Everyone loves a good biography, and I think that is especially understanding when it comes to a news organization. They're going to be all about creating a category for biographies. These also are generally really good. I think the 3 biographies last year, I may have put all 3 of them in my top 5, looking at all 18 works that were part of the 6 categories. I'm not positive, but I certainly enjoyed the biographies. I always have. Then there's memoir or autobiography. Now, biography and autobiography used to be one category, and just 2 years ago, I think this is only the 2nd, maybe the 3rd year now, that they have had a completely separate category. I will confess, this is almost always my weakest category. I don't love autobiographies for the most part. They either tend to be these too simplistic, and I'm thinking of the stuff that pop stars will put out where it gives you a few fun little tidbits about their life growing up, but no one's going to come away saying, oh, but that was an incredibly insightful book that let me know so much more about the person. No, they're almost always going to say, no, there's just a few fun stories in there. And I understand that people, especially if you're some kind of pop culture figure, you're going to be somewhat guarded, and so feeling vulnerable in those. Also, you probably don't have time to actually write them. They're almost all going to be ghostwritten. So I don't love those type of autobiographies, and of course those almost never are on the list. So then on the flip side of that, the autobiographies tends to be ones that are just a little too into themselves. Not to say that people telling stories about their life isn't worthwhile. On the contrary, I actually think that the best books out there are when the author acknowledges their own involvement, especially someone like Bill Bryson or Mary Roach. I mean, these are people where they're not writing autobiographies, but when they do write about some kind of nonfiction topic, they certainly still acknowledge their own part of the writing process. And I enjoy that. But I just feel like there's an element of memoirs or autobiographies, especially the ones that really appeal to the literary type, that I just don't always care for. I have my reasons, but I just don't always love them. That being said, I have still seen some really good autobiographies. Then the next category is poetry. I really enjoy this category, especially because I've always liked poetry, but it's really hard to know like what are the best and the highest regarded poetry out there at the moment. And I think this is a great way to get a nice little sampling of poems that are really resonating with people. Then there is general nonfiction. This is, of course, an opportunity to just have any other books that are nonfiction that are just going to appeal to anyone. I will say that it is almost always still going to be pretty heavily history oriented. That is, again, just going to be a product of this being a journalistic society, means that they are going to be very interested in books that are telling a story. And I think that just tends to favor writing about an historical event. Now, that being said, let's take a look at each of the books and the categories, and I will just give you my first impressions. I'll tell you if I've read the book, if I've heard of the author, and I will read the little blurb that comes on the Pulitzer Prize site, and I will just let you know which ones I'm most excited to read. So let's start in our first category. The winner is In Fiction, James by Percival Everett. I have read this one, and you can check out my review of that already. I read it because it got a lot of attention last year. I think this was considered a front runner for a while now to be the fiction book winner, and sure enough, it did win it. I don't know by the margins, they don't tell you that, but it seems as though that it lived up to all of the interest that it was getting last year. So you can check out my review of that. I do think it's an excellent book. I haven't read the other three yet, so I don't know for sure if it's my favorite, but there's a good chance that I would probably agree with the rest of the committee, because I did really enjoy it. So you can check that out. I should probably read more of Percival Everett's books. I very much enjoyed James, and so I'd love to read more by him. But just in case you don't know James, this is the quick synopsis of it. It is a retelling of the story of Huckleberry Finn, which is already an incredibly important work in terms of American history and the development of American culture and a representation of American culture, and just a really interesting commentary on slavery and just the thought processes around slavery. And this is taking that story and retelling it from the perspective of Jim the runaway, who is with Huckleberry Finn the bulk of the book, or a significant portion of the book. And so it is switching that, and it's telling it from his narrative. And it takes quite a few interesting liberties that are certainly worth reading. If that sounds remotely appealing to you, I highly recommend that one. And I suspect this will probably be pretty high when I rank all these books at the end of the year. Probably be pretty high on that list, because it is a great book, and you can check that one out. This was also on the New York Times list of top 10 books for 2024, which I also have a playlist of, so you can check that out as well. And you can also check out this video for this year's Pulitzer Prize playlist that I also have set up. You can check that out now. So that is the winner for fiction. Now let's look at the finalists. There's actually 3 additional finalists. That's interesting. I'm not sure why. There must have been, again, some kind of tie somewhere in there. So what do we have? We have Headshot, a novel by Rita Bullwinkle. I have not heard of her, although that's a fun name. Let's see. It is about 8 young women in a boxing tournament that examines the competitors' personalities through their fighting styles, a taut narrative about the struggle to determine one's own fate. That sounds fascinating. I'm very excited to give this one a read. 8 young women in a boxing tournament. Wow. And I especially love the idea of a taut narrative, because sometimes that can be one of the challenges of these books when they're a little too experimental. It also means that it can be a little hard to follow the narrative. So hopefully that taut element is true, and we'll find out about it. I'm very much interested in that. The other finalist in this category is Mice 1961 by Stacy Levine. I don't know her. It is a novel set in the Cold War era about 2 orphaned half-sisters, a boarder, and the neighbors who surround them. A stylized and startling depiction of lives lived at a high pitch of emotion in the shadow of global catastrophe. That sounds really interesting. I am certainly intrigued, although the stylized and startling depiction is a little concerning to me. Stylized in that case could tell me that it might be a little too experimental in the way that it's told, but I will certainly find out, and I will let you guys know when I do a review on it. The last one is The Unicorn Woman by Gail Jones, an ambitious and topsy-turvy vision of the segregated South narrated by Army veteran whose obsession with a sideshow attraction is presented in a swirl of memories and dreams, rich with literary allusions and jokes. Okay, that sounds interesting, very interesting. A topsy-turvy vision. Again, that may suggest that it's just a little experimental, but we'll find out. That is very appealing to me in all other respects. So I'm excited to dig into that one. The next category, history. So we have 2 winners and then 1 additional finalist for this. The 2 winners are Combie, Harriet Tubman, The Combahee River Raid, and Black Freedom During the Civil War by Etta L. Fields Black. I have not heard of Etta L. Fields Black, but I love Harriet Tubman. I think she's one of the most interesting characters in all of American history. I've loved any biography I've gotten my hands on about her, and the fact that this is focusing on one specific thing from her incredibly interesting life, something that I actually do think is generally not a lot written about it, although it is a very long book, but it is coming from Oxford University Press, so it also has some real respect from the academic world as well as from the literary type. So I'm I'm very excited for that one. That one sounds incredibly interesting to me. And then we have Native Nations, A Millennium in North America by Kathleen Duval. And this is a panoramic portrait of Native American nations and communities over 1,000 years, a vivid and accessible account of their endurance, ingenuity, and achievement in the face of conflict and dispossession. That also sounds very interesting, although also it sounds very challenging. That, of course, won't stop me from reading it. I read a book just last year. I'm blanking on the name of it. I'm sure it will come to me later on, and it'll be too late for me to actually, respond to this. But I read a book just last year that I feel like was very similar in terms of its approach to telling the history of the Native Americans, particularly this idea of a reimagining of the telling of the history of the Native Americans from a perspective where you're recentering it instead of having it be a more of a periphery element of the history of the United States. And the name of that is, forgive me, you know what, I'll just have to edit this part out because I'm going to go find it because it was a really, really good book and I want to get it right. And the name of that was The Rediscovery of America by Ned Blackhawk. That is, of course, you can check out that review here or here, wherever they pop up. And I really enjoyed that book, and it sounds like this may be similar, at least along the same lines. I'll find out and I'll let you guys know. But I'm very much interested in that one as well. Plantation Goods, A Material History of American Slavery by Seth Rockman, University of Chicago Press. Oh, also from a university press. So that is excellent. And that is just a fascinating sounding topic. The idea of material history in particular. As a historian, we love to reconsider different ways to look at history. And so this idea of taking a material look at it could be very interesting. So I'm definitely excited to take a look at that one as well. In biography, our winner is Every Living Thing, The Great and Deadly Race to Know All Life. And that is by Jason Roberts, who I have not heard of. It is a beautifully written double history of Carl Linnaeus and George Louis de Buffon, 18th century contemporaries who devoted their lives to identifying and describing nature's secrets and who continue to influence how we understand the world. Interesting. Okay, so I'm familiar with Carl Linnaeus. He's most famous for, what do we call it, the binomial nomenclature, where when you give the species name of something, Homo sapiens, you're saying, well, actually it's Homo sapiens sapiens, or I don't have any others off the top of my head, but where you say the two parts of it, that's where he's the one that created that and championed that system and helped to profligate it. I actually don't know much about de Buffon, so this will be an interesting read. Now, I will say, if you had asked me before if I had any interest in reading a biography about Carl Linnaeus, I'd say he's not at the top of my list. I've heard of him. I know some of the stuff he did, but I just can't say that he's someone I'm particularly interested in reading about. But I would also say that since it won, that makes me all the more interested. My favorite is when they have books or topics that I never thought I'd be interested in, but it was good enough for it to appeal to all of the, well, maybe not all of, but enough of the judges and the committee that is what they chose. Then that tells me that this is a book written in a really interesting way, and I will probably have a much greater appreciation for these individuals by the end of the book, and it will probably also take me along quite a journey, which is something I'm really looking forward to. Next, the two finalists are John Lewis, A Life by David Greenberg. I'm very interested in reading that. I've long since respected John Lewis, and I think he was right there at a lot of the most pivotal points in American history, especially in the second half of the 20th century. And I'm glad to see there's a biography about him, and I'm very interested in seeing how well it is written. The World She Edited, Catherine S. White at The New Yorker by Amy Reading. I don't know that author or who it's even referencing. So again, the fact that I don't know who the topic or the subject of the book is means that I will probably find this all the more interesting. So that sounds fascinating. I'm very interested to see who this Catherine S. White character is and why she is considered so important. That will definitely appeal to me. Okay, next category is memoir or autobiography. We have Feeding Ghosts, a graphic memoir by Tessa Holes. Interesting, a graphic memoir, great. An affecting work of literary art and discovery whose illustrations bring to life 3 generations of Chinese women, the author, her mother, and grandmother, and the experience of trauma handed down with family histories. This sounds interesting. So interesting. Of course, when I think of a book like this, I haven't read this, so I don't know what this one is about exactly, but everyone would, as soon as giving you that description, if you did not immediately think of Persepolis, then then you need to go read Persepolis, because I love Persepolis. It's a very interesting book, and that description, of course, made me think of it immediately, and I will find out how well they compare and if I actually still think that that's an apt comparison, but I will let you know, because that sounds so interesting. So that's the winner. The two, which, by the way, I've already said I don't love memoir and autobiography, but that definitely has definitely caught my attention, so I could change my mind. The next one is Fee, a Memoir of My Son by Alexandra Fuller. I do not know anything about that. Let's see. An elegiac meditation on motherhood and grief, written from the rage and pain of losing a child, but in a voice that ultimately resonates with beauty and hard-won acceptance. Okay, well, I will read that, but I know now that that is going to be a real challenge for me to read. Yeah, I'll find out. Yeah. With a young child, anything about someone losing a child, just it hits me so much more now than it ever did, and so I'm confident that I will really struggle with getting through that book, but I will let you guys know my thoughts on it as I finish them. All right, the other finalist in that category is I Heard Her Call My Name, a Memoir of Transition by Lucy Sante. I've actually already read this one because it was also on the New York Times list of best 10 books of 2024. It's a very interesting read, excellent book. I'm actually not surprised that it made it into the finalists for this category, and I would recommend that. You can, of course, check out my review for that here, and please let me know your guys' thoughts on that book. Moving on, poetry. I can tell you now, I'm not going to know any of these authors. I never do, but I enjoy the book so much so that I'm definitely looking forward to reading them. New and Selected Poems by Marie Howe. That is the winner. It is a collection drawn from decades of work that mines the day-to-day modern experience for evidence of our shared loneliness, mortality, and holiness. Don't know anything about it, but that does sound very interesting. And it does sound like it is probably also a wide variety of types of poems. And I'll see just how thematic they are as I make my way through that collection of poems. We have An Authentic Life by Jennifer Chang. Again, never heard of the author. This little synopsis says, reflective poems that fuse ancient philosophy with contemporary language and an immigrant perspective in a quest to find truth in the Western world. Ooh, that sounds fascinating. Okay, I'm definitely very interested in that one. So that one does appear to have some kind of strong theme to go throughout all of the poems. So I look forward to that one. And then we have Bluff, poems by Denez Smith, who I've also never heard of. So let's see. A cycle of work that grapples with artistic resilience and the responsibilities of a poet when engaging with powers that have been used to oppress others. Okay, I don't know exactly what that is alluding to. I will find out when I read that one. And then last but not least, we have general nonfiction. The winner is To the Success of Our Hopeless Cause, The Many Lives of the Soviet Dissident Movement by Benjamin Nathans. It is from Princeton University Press, so also from a university press, which means that it is going to get some academic street cred. But I don't know anything about that author. I don't know anything about this topic, so I'm very interested in seeing what this is regarding. Like I said, there is a tendency to be more related to history, and that very much sounds like that. A prodigiously researched and revealing history of Soviet dissent, how it was repeatedly put down and came to life again, populated by a sprawling cast of courageous people dedicated to fighting for threatened freedoms and hard-earned rights. That sounds very interesting. I don't know the scope of it. I know nothing about the structure of it, so I'm very interested in seeing how exactly that is presented. And then we have on the hit list, A Journalist's Murder and the Rise of Autocracy in India by Rollo Romig. I don't know anything about that book. I think that the little subtitle right there, the colon part of it, is pretty revealing. It's a captivating account of a crusading South Indian's murder, a mystery rich in local culture and politics that also connects to such global themes as authoritarianism, fundamentalism, and other threats to free expression. Yeah, I'm very interested in reading about that. We know in the last few years, we have certainly seen some questionable activity from the Indian government. I'm thinking of the Sikh separatist that was killed in Canada, and also revelations that there had been efforts on some Sikh separatists here in the United States, and there had been plans on assassinating them as well. So this sounds like it is, at least somewhat related to that, and that very much sounds not only relevant to the time, but something worth reading, and I will let you guys know when I get to it. And then the last finalist from that category, Until I Find You, Disappeared Children and Chorus of Adoptions in Guatemala, by Rachel Nolan, and it is also from Harvard University Press. So again, a university press, which there is a lot of those this year. That's interesting. There are not usually that many. So I'm very intrigued to read more about that. I will say I haven't heard anything about this specifically from Guatemala, but that general category of disappeared children and chorus of adoptions, I have heard a fair amount of that in respect to Argentina, and then even in Europe during the Franco years in Spain. So this general topic is not new to me, but this area of Guatemala is new to me, and I am very interested in reading more about that. Again, though, considering the subject matter, I probably will really struggle with it, just because of this idea of people's children's being taken from them. That is going to be really challenging to read, but I'll see what it has to say. Okay, that is, so I think that was 19 books total, because we had 3 finalists in the fiction category plus the winner, and I have read 2 of them, and I am looking forward to so many of these books. That's why I enjoy reading these books, and I don't know, there were maybe 2 in there, or maybe 3 where I was like, that might be a challenge to get through, but by and large, I am very interested in a good deal of these. And I will say right now that I actually thought that the autobiographies, at least the 2 of the 3 sounded much more interesting to me this year than they had in past years. I already read the one by Lucy Sante, and I did enjoy that one. And then the graphic novel one sounds very interesting, so I'm excited to read that one. And then, of course, the one about a mother losing her son, that one will be a challenge for me. Well, I look forward to what you guys have to say about these books, especially as I come out with reviews for them. Please let me know in the comments which ones you guys are most interested in hearing about. I will read them. I will probably read them a little quicker this year than I have in years past, for a few reasons. My to-read list has gotten really short. Well, actually, my to-read list has only gotten longer. The amount of books that I have been reading in the last couple months has shortened because of my other YouTube channel, which go check that out if you would like to know more. History Unraveled with Dr. Duncan. But please let me know in the comments what books you guys are most interested in, or your thoughts on these books in general, or some books that maybe you would have put in these categories that didn't make it, or which ones that you simply don't think deserve it. I don't know, anything. I love to get this conversation going about the Pulitzer Prize finalists and winners. Please let me know what you guys think, but don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, and until next time, keep those pages turning.